Welcome, everybody, to part two of the Two Fish at the Table poker podcast coverage of Game of Gold. I'm one of your hosts, Legend of Ben One on Poker Stars.
I'm your other host, East Coast Sam, also known as Charlie Carroll's identical twin. Last episode, we covered the first four episodes of Game of Gold. Here we are back to
First two.
discuss. Oh, first, never mind. First two episodes of Game of Gold. Here we are back to discuss episodes 3 through 6, just before we stop for Thanksgiving. And this is our Thanksgiving treat to y'all. Hopefully, you're thankful for our coverage.
Maybe you'll have a club sandwich at your Thanksgiving feast in honor of a certain team club not doing so well.
Yeah, exactly.
So last time we were pretty high on the show. We were enjoying the structure, the editing, the format, and with these next batch of 4 episodes, I was a little surprised. I found my opinions maybe wavering a little bit as the rest of round one kind of played out, and then I thought that was a pretty solid rebound as round two started up here, and obviously it's a poker show first and foremost, but I guess my major gripe before we get into each episode individually was that it seemed like it was a pretty vanilla poker sort of structure for as far as how they were designing the actual rounds of play. But I'm very happy with episode 6 in particular. So as we get there, what was your sort of general consensus on this batch episode before we go into each one?
Well, I liked 3 and 4 fine. I thought they were pretty good. 5, I thought was kind of weak, and then 6 was pretty good as well. So yeah, I mean, now that the challenge, now that we've seen the second challenge, it's pretty clear this is going to be a fairly by the numbers poker challenge for each one, which is totally fine. But in terms of the gold coins, they did change that up a little bit. In the second challenge, they had it be 2 gold coins for a time extension of 30 seconds instead of 1. So I think that's okay. As we mentioned in the last episode, I would prefer something like, one player makes a deal to the other. I'll give you 2 gold coins if you show me 1 card. That'd be kind of interesting. Again, they haven't established in the rules yet if that's allowed or not. I hope that it will be allowed in the future. And that's fine if you want to do that type of challenge. The key is to have very good commentary throughout, have the players be engaged, have everybody seem happy to be there. And it does seem like for the most part, nearly everybody is there to have fun and really mix it up. But the commentary does ebb and flow, and sometimes comments are better than others, and some episodes have better commentary than others. On the whole, it still works. But if you're going to have, again, traditional poker be the challenge for the most part, then you really have to have great commentary.
I agree. Where we left off last time was team clubs after the first couple of rounds were really kind of in a tough spot here with match 3 in round 1 going on here. Negreanu still kind of taking head stage here. He was responsible for a pretty good amount of viewer uptick in episode 2 because they used his image for the thumbnail, and viewership has trailed off a little bit episode to episode since then, so I'm a little concerned about that. But Negreanu really kind of having to make some moves here because a 3rd or 4th place finish would pretty much be unequivocally the end of team clubs from just the early going on. And but to my surprise, actually, the main kind of character in match 3 was really kind of Robinson. He gets like the bulk of the edit for the hand selection in the first half of the action, and I didn't get the greatest sense of his poker abilities. I mean, he is one of the kind of newcomers, generally speaking, compared to the rest of the field. But even when he wins hands, they're relatively small pots, and so it does seem like the deck was definitely stacked against him in the editing room as far as letting him see his poker chops.
Yeah, the last episode, episode 2, ended with him losing a big pot. So it's kind of interesting going forward that they gave him such a big edit in episode 3. And yeah, he does fine for the most part. I think, one of the reasons why they featured him is he did respond to Daniel a lot at the table. And he seems like a totally nice guy. You mentioned in the last episode that we talked about that, his edit was a little bit smaller than the other people's, especially in comparison to the newer players. Olga was getting a pretty big edit in comparison to him, but he gets to quite a few moments in here where we see a little bit more of his personality showing, bluffs, playing with a wide range of hands, 6-5, pocket sevens, things like that. So, it's good to see a little bit more of him featured in this episode.
Yeah, I counted there were a total of 15 hands shown from match 3 in this episode. And Robinson is involved in, I believe, 7 of the first 8 the eighth hand being the one he busts in fourth place when he runs into Yoh Viral's kings when he shoves sixes. And again, with the if you take out the whole survival element of round one, busting in fourth place in match three, it still puts you in a better spot than maybe even a second or a third or a first in the early matches, depending on the breakdown of the coin payout. So the fact that Robinson even managed to convince his team to be in match three is kind of a win for him anyway. Even despite finishing in fourth place. And then I was really caught off guard because there's a sort of a montage of Negreanu raising and taking with a short stack, and he wins three hands back to back to back, just in like a montage sort of quickly skimmed over fashion, which kind of fooled me. I thought, okay, maybe he's gonna, now after that third shove, he gets enough big blinds where he's maybe a bit more of a player when three-handed play is continuing, but he actually does bust out in third place when he shoves ace deuce after Yoh Viral limps ace king. Nathan Negreanu can't help himself when he's in that spot. The limp looks so polarizing. Either it's some middling hand or a monster hand, and ace deuce. I think you've mentioned that's kind of your least favorite hand. So I imagine in that spot you would have probably checked back.
Yeah, I think so. I hate ace deuce. Ace deuce off is my least favorite hand because, again, as a conservative player, I tend to have, shall I say, a smaller stack than the other competitors. So, getting dealt ace deuce when I have 8 big blinds is the worst thing. I always fold it. But Negreanu again. I mean, it's Daniel Negreanu. It's nice to see him have such a big hit and have the first sort of montage of the show here. But yeah, I mean, just getting third place is just it's just disappointing to say the least.
Yeah, and again, it really put Team Clubs into a pretty deep hole heading into match 4. But obviously, with match 3 still going on, we have Yoh Viral up against Maria Ho, and I think arguably the craziest hand up until this point in the season has to have been the Ace King Aces hand, where somehow Maria does not go broke, and just all the reactions from the teams watching in the back rooms was just absolutely hilarious to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a crazy hand. I mean, she limps with ace king. Viral checks back aces. Viral bets 300 on the flop. Ho calls. Then Ho leads out 470. Viral calls and then check on the river, which is just insane given the action. I mean, Maria should be going, at a minimum, she should be having a significantly diminished stack, if not going broke so many times. And then just like the quick montage of all these reactions from different people, like this is either the greatest thing they've ever seen or the worst thing they've ever seen. And just, Daniel calls it one of the stupidest hands he's ever seen, which is it's just funny seeing him just like leaning back, just like almost angry at what's happening here. Because him and Maria are very good friends too. So for him to say that is pretty big.
Absolutely, and I again, a pretty wild hand when your heads up with ace king aces. You don't even think about limping and checking, and you just assume it's going to go all in pre-flop. When the blinds are as big as they are, it was 150k, 300k with only 8 million in play. So if anyone does a raise or a bet instead of a check or a call at some point in time, that hand's over in lightning quick and with a Yoh Viral win. But unfortunately, Maria, despite surviving that situation, does not run into any luck in the next hand and does bust. And again, a very respectable second place, which again, with that coin payout structure in the third round, really kind of puts you in a better spot than say first place in round 1. So I said before, I'd be happy with second place in any of the matches because that's still pretty good for both yourself and the team. So
yeah, absolutely. And Viral takes it down, and he's an interesting personality. I mean, I'll say, because like wasn't very well aware of him before, but just seeing him play throughout, like I'm now a pretty big fan of his. So yeah, good for him.
Absolutely, and again, first place in round 3 is again a lot of coins, and again in this structure in this whole program, staying in that first spot just gives you so many advantages that are both revealed to you before and after the results are announced. Because as we'll learn in this spot between rounds 1 and rounds 2, being in that first place team spot is just the EV in that is hard to measure, but it's really a substantial advantage in the later challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we only see a little bit of match 4 before the episode ends, and it's Jason Kuhn versus Jungleman versus David Williams versus Fedor Holtz. I mean, it's a stacked cast, and only see a couple of hands before the episode ends. I understand because of time constraints, they can only show so many, but it was a little disappointing. I wanted to see a little bit more.
Yeah, and with the scoreboard, right now. I mean, at this point I was less focused on the individual players' coin totals. I really only care about the collective team totals. And so Team Clubs was 17 coins behind third place, which was Team Hearts. And so I imagined odds are they'd have to finish 2 spots ahead of Team Hearts or finish first overall and maybe even second overall to lock in a spot in the next round. And obviously, with Jason Kuhn paying off our betting a bluff on the river against David Williams and getting called, it just ended that episode into episode 4 with the element that this is probably not going to go Team Clubs' way overall.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be expecting with that team lineup that they would just be doing so well, and to just end on that note, no less. It's like, wow, they're actually going to go broke here.
Absolutely. And with match 4, we don't actually learn what the coin payout structure is during the match. We don't learn until the whole thing is concluded, and then when they do the master results tally and whatnot, then they finally announce who made it, and then they show the coins afterwards. With match 4, again, heavy hitters, definitely players that I would have, if you put these 16 players into one big multi-table tournament, I would have put them definitely towards the very top of my, Legend of Ben power rankings. And unfortunately, Jason Kuhn, he loses a small pot, wins a small pot, refuses to get bluffed by, and then unfortunately, he finds his way out in 4th place on shoving of kings, getting called by Fedor's ace queen, and just ace on the flop kind of ends things.
Yeah, and then I mean after that, because that their team's going to finish last. I mean, they again don't reveal the point total, and I was scared that they were going to do something like, oh, if you get 4th place in this round, you actually get 100 points, and everyone else gets 0, some sort of twist. They don't do that. So I mean, once that he's gone broke, it takes a little bit of the tension out of the episode. The rest of the action's fine. There's plenty of interesting moments. A very odd moment with David Williams talking in the middle of a hand that Jungleman's involved, and Jungleman has his real sort of first moment in the edit where his personality really starts to come out, where he seems very frustrated and starts like shaking his head and say, "Go talk in the middle of the hand." It actually seems a little tilted even afterward over it, which is an interesting moment to have in the edit.
Yeah, it was also only the second time a gold coin was used as time extension. Nikita had used one in her match, and then Jungleman uses the second usage of them as a time extension. And again, yeah, with talking during hands, if there's no shot clock, I think it's a bit less egregious. I mean, obviously in a tournament, there's a level structure, and that's maybe if it was a cash game, not a big deal. Tournament, maybe a minor deal, and then a shot clock game, bigger deal. And especially when there's a small table, there's only four seats. So if you're talking to someone, you're probably seat neighbors with that person. So you're talking kind of into their ear across the table at someone else. So I definitely see what Jungle was getting at, and he does actually make the correct fold. So despite all these distractions and everything, he was able to do the right thing. So props to him for that fold. Unfortunately, things only get a little bit worse for Kate's. After Kuhn bust, Jungleman goes all in with his last little nub and loses in third place, and then does not know where to go after he busts. That was pretty funny too.
That is funny. Yeah, it's a very strange hand when he busts, because he leaves himself with just a small amount of chips behind on the river, and then finally calls it off. It's just very sort of strange. I would have just gone with it. Ace 3 is not a bad hand to go all in on. I may not be fond of ace deuce, but ace 3 is a little bit better. So I would have just gone all in right to begin with.
Yeah, I hear you there. And I should mention, you mentioned how Kuhn being eliminated really kind of killed a lot of the suspense and drama for the whole episode, because there was really no. I mean, I guess obviously if you care who's going to finish in first in the overall rankings, okay. But typically on reality shows, the audience is more concerned about who's being knocked out, not who's going to win the prize in that episode, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So that does hurt things. I thought the poker action in episode 3 was the best of the first 3. In episode 4, pretty comparable, given that we have some high level players, battling it out. But I do say, again, it's probably for me the weakest episode of the 4, due to the fact that the whole point of round 1's conclusion is on the suspense of who's going to be eliminated, and we literally had no mystery. The the idea of the fourth match having a mystery payout structure was really cool, but ultimately didn't add anything to the overall episode.
Yeah, and then David Williams closes it out. Holtz finishes in second place, and then they do reveal the results in the studio, and everybody gets to say goodbye, which I thought was nice. They actually got to mingle with each other, and then they had a brief segment where all four of them are actually interviewed together, and they discuss what their action was like, and all of them took it well. They were all good sports, saying that they enjoyed actually watching the poker action as well as playing the poker. Even saying like it was nice to watch poker for 4 hours a cell phone. So that was nice that that's how they're going out. That's their end note.
Yeah, I mean, you compare it to other reality shows where when you're the first one out, maybe you do one leg of the Amazing Race, or you survive, 3 days of Survivor. At least with this structure, you got to play in a match and then be a part of the team for 3 more matches. So you felt like you were kind of on 4 things, so to speak. So you don't feel as ripped off from going all the way out to Korea and then having to go back home relatively quickly. At least they got that vibe, and obviously they had a great sense of camaraderie and really enjoyed the experience. So that's great, especially Negreanu. He's talked about how much he loved this entire experience. He would be happy to go back for a second try. So that was good. But again, it's a bit of a shame because of Cohen being out in 4th place, and again, like third, 4th. Kind of like with the Poker Premier League, we talked about, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. How you start things off is just so important. Momentum does matter. It does things can kind of snowball out of control. And this was, I'm not saying that these guys played poorly because they did poorly in the early episodes, but just narratively speaking, things just kind of spiraled out of control for them.
Yeah, and then one other thing was the team that got first, the Spades team, each player got an additional 30 coins. So you're really compounding first place in addition to, last place busting. So again, the coin structure, I don't know if I would have given them an extra 30 coins. I think that's maybe just a little too much of a gap there. 10 coins maybe would have been fine, but 30, I think is just takes things a little too far for that team.
Then you're guaranteeing that they have at least 31 coins more than the next closest team possible. Yeah. Not players, but the team. So obviously, I mean, it's hypothetically that if you could have spent all your coins on time extensions in the first round, then you got 30, maybe you had less than somebody else. Unlikely, but it's still extreme. But that's certainly possible. They revealed the coin spread for match 4, and it was 60, 45, 22, and 5. Which means that a first or second would have guaranteed clubs to have been in, and 3rd place would have been a tie with hearts had hearts finished in 4th and clubs finished in 3rd. So that could have been really cool had we had a 3rd place, 4th place clubs hearts tiebreaker match. That would have been pretty cool. But either way, that concluded round 1. They did this sort of thing where they did like the next few days were teased during the end of episode trailer, and I mistakenly watched it because I usually have been skipping the next time trailer for each episode, but I did think that was a pretty effective few seconds of oh, what's this going to happen next. It did get me excited for round 2, and so that did accomplish its goal. But I think last time I gave episode 1 8.5 and episode 2 an 8. I probably gave episode 3 an 8 also. Then I have to give episode 4 like a 7.5 just because of the lack of suspense towards the end.
Yeah, those are fair scores. Yeah.
And again, I'm still really enjoying things, but I'm just, there's little things that I think could have been, sometimes you could have the best structure in the world, but then how things play out could be really disappointing. And again, I'm not saying disappointed, but just, relatively speaking.
Absolutely.
Which moves us on to round 2, which finally brings us back a bit more into the social reality, psychological aspects of the game, and a little bit less on the poker, at least for the first section of the episode, with round 5 called No Turning Back, episode 5, excuse me. With round 2, the spades get broken up into individuals, and then they have to do a little schoolyard draft to draft two teammates in kind of a round robin structure, where the person picking last in the first round picks first in round 2. And so that was another highlight in seeing just these different characters that we've grown to slowly learn about, balance off each other and interact with each other.
Yeah, so Johan got to pick first, and his first choice was Fedor, but Fedor was already a captain, which was a nice moment. So he picks Jungle, and Jungle just walks over, like, just completely apathetic, which is just just such an interesting characterization to have. I mean, I don't know what was going through his mind, if he wasn't enjoying the experience or whatever, but to just see 11 players who are so excited and happy to be there, and then Jungle just being the almost like the villain, to use a reality show parlance, is just funny.
Yeah, so and again, the team names change from the suits in the deck to the captains. So we have Team Johan, Team Fedor, Team Charlie, and Team Nikita, and they go in order of coins on that team, how many coins they've earned so far. So Johan having and again being the most coins, then Fedor, then Charlie, then Nikita, and you have to I don't so they were gonna they ultimately are picking teams for the team heads up battle rounds where you have three on three. You if you win, you move on to the next one. You win 30 coins for each round you win, and it's 100 big blind match, so the same exact size as round one, same blind structure, same level length, etc. And then it's a four team tournament. So the winner of that team tournament just goes right into round four. The teams that finish second and third will move on to round three, and then the team that loses in the structure goes out in fourth, fifth, and sixth out in the whole program. So after Johan picks Jungleman, Fedor picks Maria, Charlie then picks Andy, and then Nikita picks Robin. Like that was the first pick where I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, that was a little weird, wasn't it? I mean, Robin again seems like a nice enough guy, and it definitely seems like he's willing to learn and grow as a poker player. But yeah, his play could have been a little bit better in spots, shall we say?
And then immediately afterwards, she picks Olga in fifth, which instantly I was like, this just created probably the weakest team already. I can already tell. I don't even need to know who the next three picks are going to be for which team. They're the underdog, and I think it was a poor choice that Nikita does try to justify a little bit later. But in the moment I'm watching this, I'm really thinking like that's just not a good move. David Williams ends up going sixth, Josh Aryeh in seventh, and Kaina, unfortunately, last pick goes to eighth, which means she's with Johan and Jungleman.
Yeah, I mean, just going over Nikita's choices for a moment, you have David Williams and you have Josh Aryeh left. Again, Olga seemed like a perfectly good player. She did well in her round, but I mean, how can you pass up one of those two? Everybody was surprised that David Williams was actually such a late pick. And then you have, I mean, two just incredibly stacked teams. I mean, team win. I mean, with Fedor, Josh, and Maria Ho. I mean, that is just such a stacked cast.
Yeah, I instantly put them tops of my sort of informal power rankings of these four new teams. The very top, I put Team Charlie second, and then just because I don't know too much about Johan, I put them in third, even though I have a lot of respect for Jungleman's heads up game, and this is a heads up round, so he's probably the biggest factor in the X factor, if you ask me, in this round. And Nikita, she defends her pick. I think because she's trying to pick players that she can get along with, and they can come to a consensus on the lineup for this round, which it has value for sure. But I just feel like you kind of have to win these. It doesn't matter if you win these matches. It's just not like if this was just all about earning coins, not much about eliminations, different story. But because you have to earn coins by not being eliminated here, I just think that it was a pretty poor choice. And Josh Aryeh, I mean, I probably would have picked him in one of my first three picks. I'm not even joking with that. I know that he's not a no limit hold'em dedicated specialist, but I don't know. He's been on such a rampage the last couple of years in so many different games that I just think he's a well-rounded player and could be a huge boost to any team.
Absolutely. And again, it's just insane that the three of them got together like that. Nobody else noticed. I mean, again, I'm not really sure what the other captains were thinking in terms of their strategy. I mean, yeah, I mean, you have to sort of think through like, yeah, rapport with your teammates for sure. But, what are other teams going to do? What are other teams looking at? And you got to get that top talent into your team sooner.
Yeah, and I imagine that this would probably just be a team for round two, and then again they'll have a different team breakdown or some sort of change up at that point. But with the kick by Charlie of Andy, now I know Andy's a cash game player, but I don't really feel that the structure of a Game of Gold really favors cash game,
Yeah.
gameplay, and so he's probably would have been lower on my picking list. We could even just do right now. So we can do our own fantasy draft here. You could be Johan, I'll be Fedor, and who would you have picked first if you had the overall first pick here?
So are the other two? Who are the other two captains, or is it just we're the only two captains?
We'll just start off with our picks here, and you just let us go from there.
Okay, so a team of three.
Yeah.
Team of three. So I think I would probably start off with Jungleman. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I probably just because if knowing it's heads up and he's the heads up man. If I didn't know it was going to be a heads up sort of battle structure, I might even just go with Josh Aryeh with my first pick.
Mhm.
Maybe you don't pick him first, but I'd probably go with Josh, and then I probably do Jungleman second, even if it's not heads up. I just think that one factor changes my order one spot.
Mhm.
Although I am a fan of David Williams too, so I would have been totally fine with picking really any of those three guys at any point in time. And then from there, obviously, I mean, I would love to have picked Fedor or maybe even Charlie Carroll if they weren't captains,
Yeah.
but obviously not possible. And again, I kind of the problem with I kind of feel there's a bit of a disadvantage for Johan to have to pick first because then he gets stuck with the last person picked.
Mhm.
And kind of obviously, it's hard to say if having just the best player can kind of overcome the worst player. Obviously, it kind of did, given how things played out. But it kind of felt like he was almost punished for being the first pick, being able to pick first. I feel like maybe picking second is more advantageous than picking first.
Yeah, I mean, but that's kind of the way this sort of game structure works. Is if you get the first choice, I
Right.
mean, that's such a big advantage that you have to overcome that somehow by having the last choice. And again, Kaima's done, obviously very well in terms of her career. So I'm not quite sure what her heads up experience is. But yeah, I mean, it's I think that's a decent team.
Absolutely. And so, as part of the advantage of being number one in coins, Johan's team also gets to pick their opponent, and put explicitly. Then that means that dooms the other two teams to have to play each other. So they pick Team Nikita, which I think was kind of a no-brainer at that point, given the lineups of the other two teams. And then we finally get the teams to break up into their own unique rooms, and they get to discuss their strategy for round two.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see what exactly the logic is here because Olga and Lucas haven't played heads up. So Nikita's got to pretty much go first by proxy. Though, I mean, Nikita says that she's very confident in her heads up game, but yeah, I mean, she's the one that has the most heads up experience. So it makes sense that, she would go first. And then Viral decides to go first. Which is an interesting choice. And then apparently they decide to have Kaina go second, and then Jungleman go last, which is kind of interesting. And we'll talk more about how that team dynamic plays out as time goes on, how that decision plays out as time goes on.
Well, I mean, the conversation amongst Team Johan is also pretty juicy to watch because they don't really listen to Kaina's logic for who should go first, second, third, why someone should be trying to fight for their spot. Because really, it took me a few minutes to kind of process the logic of what makes sense. But really, because this is King of the Hill and not best of three,
Right.
uh, you have to you can there's no disadvantage to going earlier in your team's rotation. You're trying to accumulate coins, and you have to lose a match for your team to lose anyway. So it's
Right.
not like if it had been best two of three and you went third, you'd be risking not going at all if your team went 0 for 2. But that's not the structure. Therefore, there literally is no rationale for trying to uh, go not go early, as early as possible unless it's going to hurt your team's dynamic, which is not the biggest deal right now, but obviously in any social game it does matter. I have to ask you, Sam, what would have been your take if you'd been on any of these teams? Would you have thought to have gone first or second, or would you have deferred to your teammates?
I would have had to have talked to my teammates first and understood what exactly the dynamic was. I probably would have preferred to have gone maybe second or so, just to kind of at least have one round where I can see how things are going and then go from there. Yeah, I mean, the King of the Hill format definitely changes things up in comparison to a 2 out of 3 format. And maybe I would have, I mean, just talking about the show in terms of entertainment value, I think I maybe would have preferred a 2 out of 3 format over a King of the Hill format, a little bit more intriguing than, especially what we wound up getting with Viral's performance here. Would have been a little bit more intriguing to have that instead of a King of the Hill format.
Because you get 30 coins per match that you win. And then
Yeah.
if your team goes on to round four by winning round two's tournaments, you each get 100 coins. And so, comparing to the coin payouts in the first round, definitely a little bit more aggressive, a little bit stronger as far as the numbers. Because if you just tallied up the total coins in one match, I think the average amount of coins you would get is far below 30. So, and they did double the cost of a time extension, which doesn't play a role until episode 6, but they didn't announce that, which I was a little surprised by. You figure they'd want to show us every little difference between rounds 1 and round 2. And at this point, though, because it's a team-based tournament elimination style, the number of coins you have is kind of devalued a little bit. I mean, you want to collect coins, but there's no punishment to getting by this round of no coins won, besides moving on to round 4 if your team wins or using time. So I thought that was maybe a bit of a misdesign of the game. I feel like there should be always some sort of balance. I mean, obviously, I assume in round 4 or round 3 there'll be another advantage to having more coins than the rest of your team or the rest of the other teams, but they didn't announce what that was. So I think that could have been a little bit of an adjustment there too.
Yeah, I mean, the winners of this round also get an extra 100 gold coins, which they've already established. 1 coin equals 1 big blind at the last game. I mean, having an extra 100 big blinds is just insane. I mean, we don't obviously know what this last game is. So, I mean, I think that's, again, just too much. Like I said with the 30 coins before, I mean, this should be, if you want to have the first round, be 10, you can have this one be 30 instead. I just think that this is just too much.
Yeah, unless somehow rounds 3 and rounds 4 give other utilities to the uses of coins, like an auction or some sort of, but I really don't think so. This kind of feels like, if I kind of refer to round 1 as kind of vanilla in its structure. This is kind of like strawberry, different flavor with one of the basic flavors. So then if like round 3 is like a 8 max table or something that's kind of chocolate, there's not too much in this sort of diverse poker structure that they could be doing. And so if the number of coins in round 3 and round 4 goes up to like 150 or something crazy, that's gonna really make this final table and this game of gold be really awkward, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I felt maybe like 50 coins might have been more appropriate than 100 coins for the winning team, because you're accumulating coins by winning these matches also. So I don't think maybe they got a little too ambitious with those numbers when they were designing it. But maybe they beta tested this and they thought this was the right number. We don't know what's to come. I will reserve my severe critiques for later, but I'm on guard for the power scaling of the number of coins, I'll say, for round to round.
Especially because the winning team automatically goes on to round 4. That's already such a big advantage that you get to just automatically go on to round 4. And maybe they want to make up for the fact that team doesn't get the chance to get coins in round 3, and that's why they have 100 gold coins. I mean, I guess that's fair, but still, 100 extra big blinds going into this. And you want to have deep stack poker too, whatever the last game's going to be, but still, I just think that's just way too much.
And Kaina began round 2 with the fewest coins. She has 26 coins, and so and then Johan has, was it like 190 or something crazy or whatever. And that's a pretty big gap. And if you went to a final table and you had someone with 26 big blinds versus 190, yeah, that's a substantial change. But if someone has 400 big blinds and one person has like 575, it's a big difference. But I don't think the game plays all that differently. At least until the blinds structure, maybe like level 10, level 12 of that format. So we'll have to see. And again, I think it's important to discuss the overall structure of the show, because the poker, it's fun to watch, but I think the blending of poker with a new format is where this show really can shine. And so I think it's as important to discuss as the poker.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say a little bit more important, because again, that element of you're earning coins for the purpose of having an advantage in the last round. I mean, you have to talk about how players are getting coins and how exactly this, dynamic of winning team moves into the 4th round is playing out. You must talk about this when you're talking about the show. And again, I don't mind the idea of having, you're trying to earn coins for outs that you have a certain number of big blinds in the last round, but it has to be calibrated, and it have to give some semblance of a chance to somebody like Kaina, who might be going into the last round with maybe 50 big blinds, versus Viral, who might have 400 big blinds. And yeah, you can still play poker with 50 big blinds, but being down 8-1, I mean, that's just such a big gap to overcome.
Yeah, in some reality shows, when there's some sort of individual score or point structure, sometimes that influences players' decisions to isolate one player to target them. If I know, Sam has 2 immunity idols in his pocket on Survivor, I want to try to vote him out without him knowing. But with poker in this structure, you can't really target a player per se because it's about the whole team that they're on, not just the player. So, Yoh Viral conceivably is kind of immune in sorts from losing that big coin advantage that he has right now because of the nature of how eliminations are structured in the show. But I think we've discussed this stuff for long enough. Let's move on to the heads up matches here, because the first match is Nikita versus Johan, and this is probably as brutal a slaughterfest as we've seen on Game of Gold thus far.
Yeah, I mean, Nikita, again, she seems excited. She does seem like she has some experience with heads up. But yeah, I mean, this is a very brief heads up match, and it just simply doesn't go her way. And just, yeah, it's a bloodbath.
There's only 5 hands are shown in this match. They'd spent the first about third of episodes setting up round 2, the team drafting, the discussions of the strategy. And I think another big gripe I had of episode 5 is that they didn't have the 2 teams not playing in the match, watching and commentating on the match, which, considering that this is a tournament structure, so each team is going to be playing the winning or losing team of this match, there's definitely some relevancy. It'd be one thing if it was, the 3rd and 4th place teams facing off in the losers bracket, and the first 2 teams aren't watching. That's, I think I want to watch that, but I could almost understand, okay, there's a little bit of why they wouldn't show that. But I think it was a bit of a missed opportunity because it just, you can cut around to all 3 teams. It doesn't have to be as intense as the teammates watching the match, but still just mix it in a few shots here and there.
That's what I was really referring to when I was talking about commentary toward the start of our conversation here. Yeah, I mean, that was really something I felt that was an unforced error. You should be having all the players in the studio commenting on what's going on. That to me is really the element that makes this show work, is all this commentary, all this conversation, what players would do in that spot, them predicting, are they going to fold? Are they going to, raise to a bet? That element is just so interesting to me, and to just not have half the cast there is just really disappointing. I understand, again, you're in Korea, you want to give people, time away from the studio so they can go and be in Korea or, pursue other opportunities. But you have to have, I really feel like you have to have terrific commentary throughout. And a lot of the commentary in this particular section just was very lackluster, in part because Jungle was asleep through half of it, which was kind of funny to see at first. But as time went on, I'm like, I want to see active players having engaging conversations about this, and kind of by her own admission is less experienced in heads up, so she wasn't able to offer as much commentary, which is, again, no problem for her. But again, it's like, if you're going to have some players in the studio who aren't as familiar with heads up, you have to balance that out by having other players who are. And we know that the other players on the other 2 teams are very experienced heads up players and very experienced tournament players, and it would have been nice to hear their perspective.
Especially since now that the teams are only of 3 players, it's now down to 2 people in each room watching the match. So we went from having 12 to 15 people watching in the back room to just 4, and that's all week. I know I did kind of enjoy how kind of asked Jungle if he could, give his input on each hand as they were unfolding, and she does it probably 3 or 4 times in this episode, which I thought is good. It shows she's trying to be part of the team, learn from the master Jungleman when he's awake, of course. But at the same time, I completely agree with your entire statement there about the commentary in this episode being lacking. Heads up play is just it's just pure, honest, unadulterated poker, and I think it's oftentimes the most commentary worthy poker, because you're not worrying about three-handed hands are a whole different wheelhouse than heads up. And so with you there, it definitely leads to us, as far as the poker portion of this episode, definitely lowers things down. And plus the fact that we have such a slaughter fest from Team Johan against Team Nikita, that does hurt things too. After Nikita busts to Johan, Lucas Robinson jumps in and just kind of felt like the rich get richer here. Lucas kind of gets steamrolled, even though there was a brief montage at one point of a few small pots going Robinson's way. It was 4 hands that he won that were, I guess, on the smaller side, nonetheless. And it's during this montage that the Jungleman falls asleep, which is pretty funny. But then, in spite of Robinson's ascension into the chip lead, Johan wins 3 big all-in pots consecutively to close the match out. And I just thought that was a very odd editing choice.
I thought so too. Yeah, I mean, you want to have a bit more intrigue than there was in the first heads up match. I understand that, but I think just show us a couple of hands where Robinson, like really let these hands play out, showing Robinson actually beating Viral and build up tension that way instead of just sort of telling us like, oh, he did attack Viral in a few hands and Jungle also fell asleep, by the way. Don't have the quick, montages are okay when you just want to kind of get through a boring chunk of action. You want this action on screen, but you just kind of have to get through it. But that actually would have been a little bit more intriguing and dramatic if we'd seen Lucas win a couple pots.
Yeah, and I have to think that if you had stretched out the montage of Lucas winning, and then maybe even had the cliffhanger of the episode be one of those all-ins that Johan won, it would have made it feel less like a Team Johan rules the world type episode, and you didn't have to show in, rush in a couple of hands of the Olga Johan squaring off, and that might have made things feel a bit more thematically satisfying. Because I was already prepped when this was going to be a slaughterhouse by Team Johan, and so by trying to mislead the audience and make us think, oh, Robinson might be able to pull this one off after all, that could have been a good way of twisting that sort of expectation. But unfortunately, they decided not to, and as a result, it really left me feeling like even if Olga plays her best game, I just wasn't vibing that she would be able to pull this off and beat Johan.
Yeah, again, as I said, I wasn't super familiar with Johan before, so I'm more familiar with him now, and I definitely think he's a player of some talent. Definitely in a number of spots, able to push the action, get people on their back foot. But yeah, I mean these 3 players, Nikita, Lucas, and Olga, just aren't as experienced and skilled to provide enough of a really competitive, interesting heads-up match. Not that they're talentless, they just don't have the skills at this point. To provide, really super engaging, high-level heads-up action. And yeah, I mean, we do have Lucas bust, then it's on to Olga, and we do end on a bit of an interesting spot with Viral shoving on her when she has second pair, and the episode ends right there. But that's a spot where like I'm folding there a lot of the time. I'm sure Ben, you're folding there a lot of the time. A lot of players are, so it's not as big of a cliffhanger as you would expect it to be.
Yeah, again, a very odd choice, and that's why I would have re-edited the episode a bit differently and have it sort of end with one of those Johan Robinson all-ins to sort of tie into maybe it's not going to be a total blowout. And Olga had already, was already down a bit if you factor in the chip she's about to lose in the in the cliffhanger hand, and kind of giving this whole episode another score here. Again, I really dug the social 17-minute portion of the episode. I wish there'd been a little bit more. I wish we would have gotten the other teams chiming in more. Maybe 1 or 2 more interviews or talking heads explaining the strategic thought processes. And again, the poker. Again, I'm even as negative as we might sound like with this part of the episode, I still enjoyed it. But I just feel like considering that I was already now recalibrating my viewing mind to, well, this is round 2 is kind of just a more basic structure that has the coins in there, but is nothing, totally out of left field. So now I kind of have these, I guess maybe even slightly lowered expectations for the rest of the structure for rounds 3 and round 4, and maybe if there's round 5, which again I enjoy the show, but I feel like it's a bit of a letdown considering how much excitement I had after the first episode of the entire show.
Yeah, again, we're just going to have to see what exactly the action is. It's also, are they going to stick with Hold'em? Are they going to bring in PLO? Or there's going to be like a dealer's choice round? I mean, that might be an interesting advantage to have for the winners of, round 1 of a future season where, round 2 is like a dealer's choice game and you get to decide what game you get to play, something like that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of my expectations moving forward, I mean, yeah, like I don't mind this particular game, heads up. That's totally fine. I think especially after having a sit and go style format, it's nice to have a refreshing change of pace for heads up. But I mean, I'm just kind of curious, like if they're just going to stick to variants of Hold'em, are they going to have like 6 max? Are they going to have 9 max at some point? I mean, what exactly are they going to do moving forward to make these challenges refreshing and interesting to watch, especially if they're just going to let the players who aren't involved, not be there in the studio? Again, you really have to have commentary here to make this a super engaging experience. So.
Yeah, and so again, probably another 7.5 for me. So if you're, graphing my grades, it's down a bit, but it's still a solid score. I mean, I would struggle to give a 7.5 with so many episodes of the main event that we discussed over the last couple of seasons that they did. But again, that's why I was all the more excited for episode 6 as we actually watched it today together. We had watched 3, 4, and 5 separately, and then decided to catch up together on episode 6 and watch them together. So episode 6, called Trigger Happy, a little bit longer, 53 minutes. It was kind of hyped up in the trailer for the last episode, sneak peeking like a supposed fighter blow up on Team Jungle. And so after Johan, in pretty quick fashion, manages to finish off Olga, as Johan comes back into the Team Johan stew room, Jungleman kind of realizes the implications of his team's lineup for round 2 and how it was probably in the long grand scheme of things a negative for him. And that leads to, again, just probably one of the best conversation social moments of the seasons up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, Viral comes back very excited and kind of is happy for him too. I mean, it's nice to just have one guy take out all 3 players for you. You can just move on to the next round, move on to the winner's bracket. But Jungle, who's just, again, been in the background for the most part in the edit thus far, has this sort of moment in the sunlight, getting very angry, like actually raising his voice, screaming, "Shut up," at Viral, who's one of his friends apparently, and to the point that it's so intense. Viral, in a confessional style interview, actually says, "Am I friends with this guy? Like, I'm supposed to be friends with him off the felt, but like, why is he treating me like this?" And kind of is completely, you can tell, completely annoyed with what has been ignored with Jungle the whole time in the stew room, and now is even more annoyed now. So it's really just, it's a fun, like, weird, crazy moment to sort of watch.
Yeah, and I really like how Jungle is able to verbalize his thoughts of why he's upset, what is triggering him, and why he's annoyed at himself. He's happy his team won. He didn't realize at the time, like, oh, if he just wins, he's gonna get 90 coins, and we don't get any coins. And then I guess if they win round 2 and the whole thing at 100 coins each, I guess that minimizes maybe how unhappy he would be. But remember, he did get 3rd place in his round 1 match, so he's not loaded with coins right now, and he wasn't on the winning team, so he doesn't have those extra layers of coin distribution that other players like Johan have gotten up to this point. And he's upset at Johan that he keeps sort of bringing up what is annoying him as far as his choice to go first, and they sort of have this informal agreement that they'll switch their order for the winner's bracket so that Jungle gets to go first and presumably earn some of those coins. But and then Johan leaves the room, and Olga's trying to go like to the bathroom. I'll let you chill, and then and Jungle is like still kind of like pulls her back into the room with his comments, and just the whole entire conversation just absolutely enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, like kind of trying to reassure him because, like, it's okay, Jungle. Like, I wanted to play too, and Jungle just screams, "That's not why. That's not why I'm mad. The triggering is the nonsense. That's what I don't like." Just it's such an awkward moment. Like, she's out of frame too, so you just see Jungle by himself, leaning down, just like upset. It's again just like one of those moments that you know. I don't want to say like it's one of these reality shows where you're just like laughing at the people in it, but yeah, like you definitely are just like cringing and just laughing at the absurdity that's going on.
And definitely coming on the heels of a few pretty poker gameplay focused episodes. It's just nice to have moments like these that are very organic and happen as a result of what just transpired in the game. And even I don't even need each moment to be this entertaining. I just need more of these moments to exist to keep me engaged in the show on as many levels as possible.
Yeah, we get a few more of these moments as we move into the next round with Fedor's team going up against Charlie's team. And, Fedor's team has prepared and, they're talking to each other over and they're working up the strategy and like, who should go first? How should we do this? Having this big, deep level conversation. And Charlie's team just gambles for it. They just flip over cards and whoever has the best hand gets to go first, which is just such an interesting way to decide how this should work.
Yeah, well, that team in particular, Team Charlie, definitely has 3 players that have the most differing skill sets. David Williams, Nolan Hold'em definitely, but he's played a few other games too. So I'm commentating. Charlie Carroll, Nolan Hold'em's a big game, but any stacks is cash game. So not all of their backgrounds sort of lead to an easy choice of who should go first, second, third. Although again, we discussed how with King of the Hill style, it doesn't really matter in the structure who goes first, unless you factor in the coin distribution situation, because it's not best of three. And so I wouldn't put my thumb down and say this player should be number one absolutely for that team. Whereas I do kind of agree with Fedor going first, even if he doesn't maybe live up to that number one spot on his team in his first match against Charlie. That first match, it's a back and forth. Neither player allows themselves to get run over or gets substantially worse cards. It's kind of a mostly fair fight that maybe the scale tips a bit more on the side of Charlie Carroll, which is why he pulls off a win in that first match.
Yeah, this is probably the best poker that we've seen thus far on the show. I mean, both are very good players, both have plenty of heads-up experience. And yeah, it really could have gone either way. I mean, I really did not know who was going to come away the champion, and Charlie just manages to just get there in the end with Ace-9 versus King-Queen.
Yeah, and which means that Maria gets thrown into the mix against Charlie in probably my favorite match of these three that we get to see. Obviously, we don't see all of the third heads-up match in this episode, but the very first hand, right off the bat, again, top three, maybe top one, top two, best hand of Game of Gold so far. Maria Ho and Charlie Carroll. Carroll makes a reference about, this is the first hand. Maria has Queen 4 suited, Charlie Carroll King Queen. The flop puts a queen out there, meaning both players have top pair. Maria Ho is out kicked, and right off the bat, Team Fedor and Josh Aurier in the back room are like, "Oh my God, we're screwed again. We're going to lose." And then, luckily, they don't go too crazy. And then even as the river puts out the case queen, trip queen to both players, we have again the most dramatic probably river decisions and action of the entire Game of Gold so far.
Yeah, I mean, when that case queen comes on the river, I mean, I was saying this is over. Everybody in the booth seemed to be saying this was over, and sure enough, Charlie goes all in. But Maria, to her credit, she does not snap call. She thinks it through, uses the first time extension of the second round, so she's paying 2 coins for this, and then manages to timeout. So she doesn't quite fold and get rid of her hand, and she actually claimed that she was going to call, but she forgot to fold, throw in the coins. But it's essentially a fold, so good to her. She managed to read the situation and get out of there and didn't just snap call. And everybody's impressed with that. Like, oh my God, like Maria was supposed to go broke there. It's such a testament to her that she managed to not go broke there.
Yeah, well, again, she has top trips, but no kicker. And the river shove is more than a pot-sized bet. I believe the pot was 1.2 million, and it was a 1.4 million shove. So it's not an instant snap call. I mean, I guess you're kind of bluff catching. I mean, there's some straights on the board. It was like queen, like 7, 8, 9 or something like that. So there was, there's a few hands that can conceivably make a. I think it was like actually 9, 7, 5 or something. So like 8, 7. So there's some straight chances out there technically, although I'm not sure a straight goes all in like that on a paired board. And what do you think, Sam, about the choice for the time extension not to be automatic in like shot clock tournaments? If you go over your time, you must pay a time extension, even if you fold like a second later or whatever. Like it's used. It's not an automatic fold unless you're out of extensions. Whereas here, they flip the switch on that idea, and it's a fold no matter what, unless you use a coin before the clock expires. What do you think about that?
I don't really have a strong opinion either way. I mean, I think it's fine to just have, you run out of time, your hand's dead. I think that's okay. I mean, she said that she forgot she had to throw the coins in, so I'm hopefully they told her the rules in advance and that wasn't just a fault on their part. As long as the players know how the time extensions work, I don't mind whatever they do.
And speaking of the gold coins, because they are actually usually brought in a little bag by the players to the table before they begin playing, and they usually bring like one stack of them. Like Johan has a whole bunch of coins. He didn't bring every single coin he has so far. He just put maybe like a 20 stack of them or something like that. And we've only seen now 4 coins be used in total. So I have to wonder if as we approach the end of the season, will players just bring out every coin they have in these big stacks next to their chips, and they'll be like, throwing them out there like willy nilly because they'll have some of them. And I assume the price of using them will go up in every round. I'll be very curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as a result of that fold, Maria loses about a third of her chips. Carroll continues to extend his chip lead, just kind of keeping the momentum going. Unfortunately, Maria finds herself down to about 400,000 and change, which is under a quarter of her starting stack. And that is where probably the most unexpected surprise comeback takes place in the Game of Gold thus far also.
Yeah, I mean, the very next hand after Maria's down, Charlie has ace 10, Maria shoves with king jack. So I'm thinking, all right, this is over. But she manages to double up and double up again and just stays in there. And credit to her. I mean, she just stays in the mix and manages to pull it out.
Yeah, Charlie, he still earns 30 coins from winning round one, so it's not a total wash as it was for Team Nikita going over 3 in that match. And it leads into the meeting of the Taiwanese poker population of Game of Gold, Maria versus Andy Stacks, which is an amusing little coincidence there. And we only get to see a little bit of this opening round, but Maria obviously feeling good about having even the score up 1-1, and we don't get too much of this match, so it remains to be seen who will win it. But I was pretty happy with the structure of this episode and how it played out.
Yeah, same here. I mean, the Charlie Maria Ho match was a lot of fun to watch, and again, I had no idea who exactly was going to win that. Really don't know who's going to win this match between Andy and Maria. It is interesting that they really did emphasize David Williams talking about how painful it was that Maria was tanking, which wasn't really something I noticed until I realized, oh yeah, like she does tank quite a lot. Whereas again, I mean, everybody's tanked a little bit thus far. But yeah, I mean, it is sort of interesting how they pointed that out in the edit. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see how this heads-up match will play out. I imagine Maria's going to win it just because she has more experience with this format, and I'm curious to see just how exactly that will happen.
I am a little curious, though, how many episodes round 2 will expand out to, because we're only let's say halfway through the second match of the initial bracket. Then we had the winners bracket and a losers bracket, and so maybe 3 more episodes, maybe to do it, maybe 2 or 3 episodes to close things out. We don't know how long the Maria Andy match will stretch out to, and then the next round of that. So remains to be seen, and I hopefully we can get more enjoyable backstage conversations amongst the teams. And they did not change their editing choices for only showing the 2 teams fighting out in the heads-up match. I wish they would have reconsidered that, but that will unfortunately probably be the case for the rest of round 2, if I had to guess.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe not for the winners bracket, maybe for the losers bracket, potentially too. I don't know. I can hope, but obviously the show is made and produced, so they're not going to change their mind based on viewer opinions. But with this going on, Sam, I'm very curious. Who do you think will ultimately is the favorite for round 2 as far as winning the whole thing?
Well, again, we just have to see how the rest of this plays out. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, you have with Viral played very well. He acquitted himself totally fine, and then you got Jungleman on your team going up first. So I mean, you have to naturally put them in the conversation, but it really depends on how the rest of this plays out. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Jungleman, I could very easily see him, winning 2 or 3 matches in the winners bracket and kind of not getting a chance to play at all, and that'll put her up to 126 coins, which probably will put her, pretty well into the mix if that ultimately plays out that way. So I don't feel like that the coin distribution amongst the 12 players really is a big deal right now. It's still early enough in the game. As long as you have at least 1 coin, so you need a time extension once, you're pretty much, that's good enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you would imagine if you're going to make it to the final table, you probably won a round or 2 along the way, so you have a healthy surplus of coins by that point. So I think again, it's still anyone's game. Obviously, I have to put some weight into Team Johan being in a good spot and Team Nikita being in a bad spot, but very excited to see how things play out. And even with Team Clubs by the wayside, I hope that maybe a la Surimol 2, they bring back maybe some of the losers of the first season to kind of try to rewrite history for themselves in Game of Gold.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Edgic, I was talking last time about how Olga I felt was getting like a winner's edit. Now that I've seen round 2 play out, I mean, I don't know, she still gets a healthy enough edit, but I'm not really noticing any other Edgic things in terms of who's going to win, who's going to run deep, anything like that. I mean, Josh R.A. still's been getting a pretty big, I mentioned last time he was getting a pretty big edit as well, sort of like the comic relief, so to speak. Yeah, he has a lot of moments where he's, giving commentary and stuff, but again, it's kind of hard to tell if I was misreading something, or what the edge is supposed to be. So we'll see.
Yeah, and again, it's a fairly balanced edit, and that's obviously helped by the fact that we're only seeing the teams playing in the head-to matches in that episode. That definitely helps things. I know I have been watching the Dat Poker podcast recap episodes of Game of Gold. They've been doing one podcast recap episode per episode of Game of Gold, and Negreanu makes it a point to interview one player that was, mostly important in that episode. They've had 6 episodes. They've interviewed 6 players, of course, Negreanu. And so I'm really hoping that we maybe might be able to in the future get someone from Game of Gold on our podcast. I'm, got some things in the works. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. But I'm optimistic, and that'd be pretty awesome if we can kind of, return serve against that poker podcast for our own podcast sake. So that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, and if you're not on Game of Gold, but you are involved in the poker community somehow, and you want to offer your thoughts, feel free to do so in the comments section. Feel free to tweet at the official account for Two Fish at the Table, or you can come on the show yourself. Obviously, Thanksgiving's tomorrow, the holiday season's coming up. We'll find some way to schedule it so it's convenient for you.
Yeah, and we did have a comment on one of our podcast episodes this week. Let me pull it up here so I can officially give them the proper shout out. I believe it was on one of our episodes a couple episodes ago. We'll pull it up in 1 second. And while I'm finding it, Sam, we are only now a couple of weeks away from the WSOP in Paradise. And I believe Poker Go will be doing a streaming of a lot of the final tables. So I think, what do you say for us definitely covering at least one of those events in the future?
Yeah, let's just hope this works out. Again, I'm just having bad vibes about this whole thing. We'll see. As long as it's entertaining, as long as everyone's happy, it's all for me. But I'll definitely be watching it. I'm sure Ben will be too, and we'll try to have at least review of it, if not some sort of live stream / commentary of it.
So the comment we had was after our Mike Postle episode by Destination OG. He said, Postle's greatest contribution to poker, crotch theory optimal.
I agree. Absolutely. Crotch theory optimal is really something that I've been using. It's the reason why actually I've won so many MSO medals, is because I've been just staring right down at my crotch, and that's what allows me to be so well. I also think that you have to have your gaze be towards your knees as well. The whole length of your legs will really let you understand when to make 3 bets, when to make 4 bets, when to have table talk. So thank you for pointing that out. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, if you have any comments of your own about any of our content we discussed, about our thoughts on Game of Gold or your thoughts on Game of Gold, let us know in the comments section. I do give episode 6 probably 8.5 out of 10. That tied for the highest, episode 1. My favorite one for some episodes. I'm really hoping that episode 7 can carry on the momentum, but obviously that's the nature of TV. You never know what you're going to get until it arrives in front of your eyeballs.
Yeah, again, I'm very excited to see how the rest of this show will play out, and then talk about it in retrospect and see how everything went. That'll be interesting.
And again, I can understand if this is a relatively straightforward structure. If they loosen things up in maybe later iterations, I can understand you want to nail down the skeleton before you put all the fancy organs. I understand that, but I think of that point, Sam, I think that concludes everything for now. We'll definitely be discussing more of Game of Gold next week. Again, there are 3 episodes every week on YouTube, so you can check it out and formulate your own opinions. Until next time, guys, enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, and enjoy your poker on TV.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Take care.
Happy tea.
Happy tea.